Alright folks, welcome back to the channel. Today, once again we're diving into that murky, often treacherous territory known as the movie tie-in game. I talked before about how games like Batman Begins manage to defy the odds and actually be good, but sometimes a game doesn't just defy the odds. Sometimes it straps on adamantium claws, pops in a cigar, and proceeds to be way better than the film it's based on.
You will suffer more pain than any other man could endure. Your bones will be coated in adamantium. When we're done, you'll be able to withstand anything, even Creed. The operation was a success, but he can't be trusted. We have his DNA for Weapon 11. Terminate him.
Yep, we're talking about X-Men Origins Wolverine. Specifically, the glorious M-rated Uncaged Edition from 2009. There was a more tame version released on the Wii and the DS, and even a mobile version, but we're going to ignore them and focus on the brutal, visceral, and 100% animalistic Uncaged version. While the movie it tied into was, well, let's just say it made some choices. The game, developed by the talented folks at Raven Software, understood one crucial thing. Wolverine is savage. It wasn't just a good movie game, it was arguably one of the best, most satisfying Wolverine experiences we've ever had in interactive form. So, whilst we eagerly await Insomniac's take on a Wolverine game, let's sharpen those claws, heal up from some questionable movie memories, and take a retrospective look at Raven's brutal, visceral take on the movie tie-in game. How did this game get Wolverine so right? Why did it feel so much better than the film? And does it still hold up as a bloody good time nearly 16 years later? Let's find out, bud. Okay, before we get to the game's gory glory, we need to quickly address the elephant in the room, or rather, the adamantium-laced mutant with amnesia in the room. The X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. Released in 2009, this was meant to be a cool backstory for everyone's favourite Canadian berserker, and it exists. Look, it had Hugh Jackman giving it his all as always, Liev Schreiber was pretty great at Sabretooth, but the plot felt messy, the CGI was occasionally dodgy, those claws, and it made some baffling decisions with beloved characters.
Hey, it's me!
It felt like a missed opportunity, sanding down the edges of a character defined by his rage and animalistic nature. Even worse, it took away any chance of other origin stories. I was so hoping for an X-Men Origins Gambit story, and then praying for the game adaptation of this. It left a lot of fans wanting more. More grit, more intensity, more actual Wolverine. Thankfully, while Hollywood was fumbling the ball, a different team was getting ready to deliver exactly that.
The best decisions come from these guys that play video games. We've got, 50 plus guys on this team.
They live it, they breathe it, they know it. They've been immersed in the lore and the legend for all these years.
The game released 29th of April 2009, the same day as the movie. And as mentioned before, the development reins of the main version of this game, the Uncaged Edition, were handed to Raven Software. Raven had a solid track record with action games, including excellent Marvel titles like X-Men Legends and Marvel Ultimate Alliance. They knew their way around superheroes, satisfying combat, and respecting the source material. Now, here's where the story behind the game gets really interesting, and possibly explain why it turned out so damn well, defying the usual movie game curse. Reportedly, Raven Software was actually already prototyping or developing a next-gen Wolverine game before it officially became the X-Men Origins Wolverine tie-in. How perfect is that? It seems Logan's fate was already in their capable, claw-friendly hands.
His origin, with getting the adamantium, getting that from the Weapon X facility, that's always been core and central to his character, so that was really where we kind of got our start with what we were going to do with the story. And luckily enough, when we started to then work with Fox and work with Marvel, and integrate the movie story, that was the story they were telling already, so it was like a perfect mix.
This pre-existing work, their pedigree, and the fact the movie was delayed by a year, explains why, while obviously developed alongside the movie to hit that simultaneous release date, the game feels like it operated within a clear, more focused mandate. Make a game that truly feels like Wolverine, specifically how it was portrayed in the comics. They said they didn't aim to just make it about blood and gore, but aimed to make a game that was true to the comic book version of Wolverine.
first thing we did is just open up a bunch of different comics. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Wolverine. Tons of the guys at the Raven are. So we just brought in our comics, opened it up, and kind of pinned up what we thought were like the iconic moments.
I think that comic book fans will really like that we have lots of little nods to some of the history of Wolverine.
Forget the watered-down PG-13 constraint to the film. This needed to be raw, visceral, and unapologetically violent. And crucially, they got that M rating. This allowed them to create the Uncaged Edition, a title that wasn't just marketing fluff. It meant blood, gore, dismemberment. The kind of stuff that happens when a guy with unbreakable metal claws fights heavily armed soldiers and other mutants. This wasn't Wolverine politely incapacitating foes. This was Wolverine tearing through them. Another win for Raven was they managed to get an amazing set of actors from the film to voice their video game counterparts. will.i.am as John Wraith, Lee Schreiber as Sabretooth, and they even got Hugh Jackman himself, blending that crucial layer of authenticity. It felt less just like playing Wolverine and more like embodying Jackman's iconic portrayal, but finally let off the leash. And I've got to say, Hugh knocks it out of the park with his voice work too. Every grunt, growl, and rage-filled scream felt authentic, and you can really tell, as always, he gave it everything he had. There's even reports of him being told that a specific part of dialogue is just after a big fight, so Wolverine may be breathless. So what does Hugh do? Maybe pant a bit while talking? Maybe hold his breath for a few seconds before starting? No. He reported to drop down and start doing push-ups to really get himself out of breath, and make the dialogue as genuine and believable as possible. Now that is commitment. Okay, let's cut to the chase. The absolute heart and soul of this game is its combat, and oh my god is it glorious. Raven Software clearly looked at games like God of War and maybe even Devil May Cry and thought, how can we translate Wolverine's berserker fury into something this satisfying? The result is a fast-paced brutal system built around Logan's claws. You've got light and heavy attacks, grabs, throws and combos that let you slice, dice and impale enemies with brutal efficiency. Limbs fly, blood splatters, it's exactly what you'd expect from Wolverine cutting loose. And then there's a lunge. This mechanic was genius. You could target an enemy from a distance and just launch Wolverine at them like a furry adamantium-tipped missile, closing gaps instantly and often leading straight into a devastating takedown or combo. It made traversing combat arenas dynamic and just felt incredibly cool and empowering. This never gets old, and whilst playing I would find myself lunging at enemies that were right next to me, or moving back a bit just so I could lunge a bit further and take them out, just because of how powerful it feels. You could use the environment too, impaling guys on spikes, throwing them into hazards, or just grabbing them and throwing them off a cliff. It encouraged creative carnage. It wasn't just button mashing, there was a flow, a rhythm to the violence that was just mwah, chef's kiss. You had thorough vision that would highlight enemies, hazards and key items in the game. Whilst fighting you earn XP and level up, as well as building up rage that you can release as a special attack. Then, as you level up more you unlock new special attacks. There are 4 in total which you unlock as you progress through the game. The first is the claw spin. This allows Wolverine to spin rapidly with his claws, slicing enemies nearby to shreds. Then there's Berserk. This grants Wolverine a temporary strength boost, making him more powerful and effective at crowd control. Then there's the Claw Drill. This is a directed frontal attack that's more powerful than the claw spin, but less effective against groups, so is more for fighting one tougher opponent. And finally, the Claw Cyclone, which is a variant of the claw spin but more effective for mid-range attacks. On top of all this, as you level up you earn skill points. These can be spent on upgrading these abilities, making them last longer or do more damage, as well as upgrading general health and claw damage. There's collectible figures hidden around the map that you have to collect to unlock bonus content, and finally, there's mutagens. This, like the figures, were hidden around the map and can be equipped to give different boosts to Wolverine in combat, for example, earning more XP, or your rage meter filling more quickly. This gave the game a sense of personalisation, as you can spend the skill points or equip mutagens that complement your playstyle, and the fact they were hidden gave you more of a reason to explore the environment and look for hidden places. Okay, saving the best for last, the most impressive part of the game was how they handled Wolverine's famous healing factor. As you took damage, you'd visually see the punishment. Bullet holes would appear, chunks of flesh would get blasted away, revealing muscle and even his adamantium skeleton beneath. it looked gruesome, but then, in real time you'd see it all stitch itself back together. It still looks impressive even by today's standards. Raven actually achieved this by rendering 4 different layers on the character model. This is one of the only games where this miraculous healing actually makes sense. It wasn't just a health bar refilling, it was a visual representation of his power, and for 2009 on Unreal Engine 3, it looked fantastic and really sold the fantasy of being nigh unkillable. The game structure loosely follows the movie's plot points, but expands on them significantly, taking you from the jungles of Africa to the Alkali Lake facility, from the snowy Canadian wilderness, and at one point, nearly into space. Yep, the level designs could be pretty linear at times, fitting the era's action game standards. There was some platforming, often using that satisfying lunge mechanic, and some basic puzzle elements too. But let's be real, these sections mostly served as breathers between the glorious combat encounters. The boss fights were generally pretty solid too, giving you memorable showdowns against key figures like Sabretooth, the Blob,
Want to sit down and rest, Bob?
and even fighting giant sentinels. They often required using specific tactics or Logan's abilities, breaking up the standard enemy encounters nicely.
Now might be a good time to give up.
So, let's circle back to that title. Why did the game outclaw the movie? It boils down to understanding the character. The game wasn't afraid to show Wolverine as the barely contained animalistic force of nature he is. The combat felt like Wolverine fighting, desperate, furious, and incredibly violent. The movie, constrained by its rating and perhaps studio interference, often felt like it was pulling its punches. The game not only landed the punch with all of its might, but then followed through and ripped the guy's arms, legs, and head clean off. Where the movie's CGI sometimes faltered, the game's visual representation of the healing factor was a constant impressive reminder of Logan's power. The game simply delivered a more visceral, more satisfying, and ultimately more faithful Wolverine experience than the film it was based on, and gave the fans the Wolverine they actually wanted to see. What's the verdict on X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition all these years later? Honestly, it still absolutely rips. It's proof that a movie tie-in game can be fantastic when given to the right developer with a clear vision. Is it perfect? No. The linearity can feel dated, the non-combat sections are serviceable at best, and maybe the enemy variety could have been a bit broader, but the core combat loop, the fantastic portrayal of Wolverine's powers, and the sheer cathartic fun of slicing through enemies remains incredibly strong. The hack and slash combat is super addictive, and it's one of those games where you're playing and think, I'll play to the next cutscene, or the end of the level. When you get there you just think, oh, okay, just a little bit more. So, my final score for X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition, the whopping 90%. It remains one of the best examples of translating a specific comic book character's feel and abilities into gameplay, and a shining example of a game that truly surpassing its cinema counterpart. They finally let the Wolverine off the chain, and it was bloody brilliant. Its biggest crime today is that due to licensing issues it's been delisted from digital storefronts and can be a pain to find and play legally, which is a real shame. If you do have an old copy lying around, or if you can track one down, it's absolutely worth firing up again. And that's my look back at X-Men Origins Wolverine. What do you guys think? Did you play this gem back in the day? Does it hold a special place in your heart too? What other movie tie-in game do you think actually nailed it? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. I love reading them. If you enjoyed this slice of retro review goodness, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel out. And if you want more retrospectives, reviews, and maybe the occasional rant about bad movie adaptations, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell too. As always, thanks so much for watching, stay safe, keep gaming, and I'll see you in the next one.